All right, let's get started. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. My name is Erica Dale. I'm a senior account manager, or I like to call myself an analytics enthusiast here at Newcomp Analytics. I'll tell you more about us as we move along, but welcome to our Redefine Financial Processes with Modern Analytics webinar. Your presenters today are myself. I'm just going to walk you through the agenda and a little bit of I'm going to call it a 40,000-foot view of the products that you're going to look at and why we think it's important for you to think about them for your organization. Brian Simpson, he's our practice lead here at Newcomp for our financial and performance management sector. And Kevin Beckberger is joining us from Certent for the Cognos Disclosure Management component. So thank you very much, Kevin, for helping us out on this. So my shameless plug on Newcomp Analytics. For those of you who don't know us, we are an IBM Premier Partner. We've been an IBM focused partner for a very long time, a little over 20 years. We work with all different organizations, whether they're government, public sector, private sector, CPG, doesn't matter what vertical, helping them with their analytics journeys. So it's our role to become your trusted advisors when it comes to doing important things with your data. Once your data is in your ERP, your GL, whatever systems you may have, it's our role to help you make better sense of it, help you understand it, and help you understand how you can leverage that valuable asset. Here at Newcomp, we have 5 major practices. So our BI and data visualization covers things like dashboarding, reporting, that type of thing. Budgeting and forecasting and planning, that's more of what you're going to see today. Predictive and advanced analytics, some of the open source stuff as well. So there's a little bit of cross-pollination. There's IBM SPSS as well as prescriptive analytics. And information management, the foundation that house is built on, whether it's data warehousing, big data, data lakes, all the ETL, all the cleansing and governance that goes in with that as well. So those are our 5 major practices here at Newcomp. Today's agenda, we're going to talk first a little bit about IBM Planning Analytics and how it can help you have a more efficient budgeting and planning solution and process, how you can better secure your operations in that regard. Certent is an excellent consideration for those of you who already have planning analytics or other budgeting and forecasting tools to help you with that next step in reporting, that narrative reporting, the board books, the cumbersome annual reports, and then we're going to demonstrate the two together. So I'm sure nobody's ever been in a meeting like this. We find that most of our customers spend 80% of their time just gathering the data and looking at the data and not enough time actually analyzing the data. And yet most of them have analyst in their job titles. So we really need to get them back to being able to focus on that data and analyzing the actual business and the scenarios that are impacting their business and not focusing so much on the data and how it's getting from A to B. We've been in boardrooms, we've literally been in meetings where customers are arguing over who has the right set of numbers. Is your revenue right, or was my sales numbers right? Whose numbers are correct? And we need to get around that. We need to make sure that these numbers are auditable, centrally located, and accessible by all to be reused in many different forms by different platforms as well. So I've been here at Newcomp a little over 20 years, and I still find that a lot of my customers are doing analytics the same way. And you can see my good friend Excel right there in the middle. We've got all of our source data sources at the left-hand side of the screen, data warehouses, GLs, manufacturing, ERPs, doesn't matter. We've got all kinds of risks inherent with this program. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. There's silos of data. Somebody's got the right current version of the spreadsheet on their laptop. There's no data integrity. What if someone has fat thumbs and overwrites a formula or a cell? It's inaccurate and inconsistent between users. Again, that who has the right set of numbers. And again, that no auditability. So for publicly traded companies or companies where there's high risk involved, we need to be able to go back and audit those numbers, who changed what, when, and understand what changes were made throughout history. This all leads to a lack of institutional knowledge. It becomes that one person in the industry, in the company has, the magic formula for FTE or the magic formula for cost of goods sold, and they're usually in the basement, and it takes us a little while to find them when we're in these projects. So we want to make sure that we get that really programmed into the system so that it can be preserved and used forever. So our job here at Newcomp is to help you solve that problem. And one of the tools that we use to do that with is IBM Planning Analytics. It's a very robust, very nimble, we kind of call it a Swiss Army knife tool for analytics. We can do almost anything with it. Think of it more like a modeling tool. Very fast, very speed oriented for the users. It actually sits in memory, so it's very responsive. And what most customers use this for is not just budgeting and forecasting, which is really core of what we're going to talk about today, but just anything where you're going, what if? What if the price of gas changes or fuel changes? What is that going to do to my bottom line? What if we open another location in a different area? What does that do? How many FTEs am I going to need to staff it? We need to be able to model all of this out very quickly and easily. We don't have time to go back to our desk when the CFO asks us and say, oh, wait, let me just do another scenario. I'll get back to you next week. We need to be able to do this within a meeting. So, but we still need to be able to leverage those Excel skills that have already been really built up within the organization. So we want to do that, as well as bring it central, secure, and allow some workflow around it, so that when I submit my plan to Brian, he can approve it, or knowing Brian, he would probably reject it and tell me to do it again. And I submit it again, and then he approves it, sends it to Kevin, and so on. So we want to make sure that we get all of that down in the process programmatically, instead of emails going back and forth in this very disjointed process. The planning analytics solution is, again, a really good tool for finance, but it's also good in other areas. We met recently, actually just this week, with a company that uses it almost predominantly in supply chain. So what happens if I have an out of stock? How do I deal with that? How do I plan for certain seasonalities in my business? How do I make sure that I have the right inventory in the right place at the right time? And it allows the users to stop focusing so much on gathering the data and start really thinking about what to do with that data and what to do with the information. So we're looking at things like operations, product profitability. Workforce planning is another key area we look at. What if a union negotiates another percentage on their benefits? What if we need to give everybody on the sales team at Newcomp a 10% raise? What does that do to my bottom line? I hope Michael's not listening. But these are the types of things that we need to be able to model out and to really look at, how is this going to impact my bottom line, and see in real time. So we want to make sure that we can give our customers like you a tool to do that. But of course, it's not just about the modeling and the data. We then have to report on it, and we need to be able to send those reports outside the organization in some cases, or to executives who don't want to log into a system, or to auditors, publicly facing some annual reports, that type of thing. So these same numbers, and this is where our friends at Certent come in with Cognos Disclosure Management, these same numbers have to appear multiple times. So we want to be able to pick them up in a Word document, but along with sentiment analysis. So a positive revenue increase and then the dollar value, but have that tied back to the actual source system, whether it's planning analytics, and I sure hope it is, or maybe it's your GL, maybe it's your ERP. It doesn't really matter to us where it's going back to. And that's one of the things I love about the CDM product, is that we can hit multiple sources, but bring in that current data. So a last minute journal entry is not going to mess up your report formatting for the next day when you open up that report. It's reflected in real time, whether it's in Word or PowerPoint or Excel. So this is ideal for me. I've seen it heavily used for annual reports, sales presentations, board books, anything where you've got a lot of heavy formatting, a lot of narrative, and we want to be able to tie the numbers in. My friends in accounting call it ticking and tying, and they would tell me stories about staying up well past midnight, doing all their ticking and tying to make sure that the numbers were absolutely correct. Heaven forbid you missed one, because that's a really serious offense in some industries. So that's where CDM really goes into, how can I make my life easier? So the solution CDM and IBM, they can be on-prem or they can be in the cloud, doesn't matter to us. We can help you configure which is the correct solution for you. CDM, like I said, works with both solutions really work with all different source systems. It can be used for a number of different internal, external, or regulatory reporting. This is the type of sort of context I wanted to give you before we jumped right into the demo. So think about different use cases that you wouldn't normally think about an analytics tool for these tools, because I think you'll find that you've got more uses than you originally thought, 15 minutes ago for a solution like this. And with that, we're going to hand over the controls to my good friend Brian. Pooja, do you have the power to do that, or do you want me to? I think, Brian, you're the presenter. Can we hear you?
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Erica. So jumping right in, I've got a short demo to show you guys on planning analytics. For those that aren't familiar, planning analytics is IBM's budgeting and planning tool. And as Erica kind of alluded to in her high-level overview, it's actually capable of quite a bit more than just strictly budgeting and planning. But I'm going to show you guys a quick demo of the features that are available in planning analytics. I'm going to start off in the web. I'm here on my server in Chrome, and I've logged into planning analytics, and I've got in front of me a series of workbooks. And I'm going to open up this one that says P&L Final on it, and we're going to take a look at kind of a finished product in planning analytics, an output that we might create as a dashboard to kind of visualize some of the data. So this is a pretty typical variance analysis sheet. I've got a couple of different versions of my data, including prior year actuals, a corporately set target, and then a consolidated budget for my entire company. And this is an interactive dashboard. I can use these filters up the top to drill down on the total company and enter into a single one of the orgs. And you'll see the visualization and these key metrics at the bottom, as well as the data grid update right away. So this is a consolidated view across the entire organization. You'll also notice I've got, as a typical variance analysis sheet set up, I've got a spot for commentary here. And this may be both surfacing information up to the executive team, but also a variance analysis report used for the budget managers to enter in any justification or explanation on their variances. And that can be done right in the dashboard itself. And so we can type in, new comments in here, like new marketing campaign. And this is really important. So this makes it available for everyone in the organization that has access. They can see it all in real time. We can move away from Excel for this. So a lot of the planning processes that we look at that are starting off in Excel suffer from, the common problem of having to cut 50 or 100 different Excel workbooks and send them out and get people to fill them in and send them back and then consolidate them manually. That can be a very time-consuming process. It also leads to issues with data integrity, with auditability, with security. Bottom line is typically Excel is not the right solution for this type of process, and organizations tend to outgrow Excel pretty quickly, and that's where we start looking at some more modern technology to help with that problem. So this is an example of kind of a finished product. These dashboards, by the way, are highly customizable, everything from the colors, the layout, the look and feel, obviously the account structures and the versions, everything on there is flexible and customizable. But let me show you how we might build the budget up. I'm a big proponent of both bottom-up and top-down planning kind of simultaneously. And so while I've had the finance department set our targets in here, I do want the budget to be collected by those budget managers. And so I'm going to come back to this main screen here, and we're going to open this day in the life book, this bottom-up plan. And this is going to pop open a input template that we use for the budget managers to actually input their budget data. Now, I've broken it into some common modules. Usually when we're doing sort of a typical planning project, we see some commonality across all organizations, and we see modules for revenue planning, for headcount planning, for operational expenses and capital, as well as outputs for interactive income statements directly in the planning process. This is a pretty typical example of a revenue planning template. This is planning by product. So I've got a fictional company here that sells phones and PCs and tablets, and that sort of product hierarchy is represented on the left here, and I can drill up and drill down on this to get into more details. As with the dashboard, I've got filters across the top that correspond to kind of different elements that I want to plan by. And that can be, everything from sales channels to departments to profit centers and cost centers to different fiscal years and fiscal periods, and of course, managing different versions of the data. And I'm working in the budget version for 2019 here. Now, I know as a budget manager that we don't actually plan by gross revenue. We do what's called driver-based planning. And my primary driver for this particular revenue plan is volume. And so I'm going to click over to volume, and you'll see the template below update. Now, I'm also a big proponent of allowing my users to do what-if analysis on the data. And that means that I want to give them the capabilities in the tool to create their own personal versions of the budget to represent different scenarios. And so I can do that very easily by clicking on the data grid here, popping open the little menu. I've got a drop down for my different scenarios. We call these sandboxes. It's a personal workspace for me to work in. And I'm feeling optimistic with my plan today. I'm going to choose my best case sandbox, and we're going to make some changes to the data here. Now, unless you're deliberately doing a zero-based budget, we usually seed the budget with something. So I've already got numbers in my budget that's been rolled over from last year's budget. Sometimes we'll apply like an incremental increase, maybe 1.5 or 2%. And sometimes we'll just roll it over and be a little bit more targeted with our increases. But I've given my users a starting point. And they really just need to go in here and apply tweaks as they see fit, where they know about changes to the business. Now, one of the really nice things about planning analytics is there's a couple of different ways we can get data in the system as a budget manager. And I can plan at any level of detail. And so as an example, I've got this number here, 13,000 units for 3G smartphones. We all know 3G smartphones are a thing of the past. That number is likely to decrease over time, and 4G is likely to go up instead. So let's apply a change to the budget here, and let's type DEC 20, representing a 20% decrease to 3G smartphones. And I'm going to push enter on that. And you're actually going to see it spread a decrease across all the fiscal periods. And by typing DEC 20, it's actually proportionally decreased each number that is representing each fiscal period, and I'm following calendar fiscal here, as well as each product under the 3G smartphones. I'm also at the total channel. This filter here has 3 different sales channels, but I don't want to plan at that level of detail. As a budget manager, I've chosen to just plan at the total and continue to spread that down proportionally. And so I've typed that in. The blue numbers indicate that I've made a change and that it's different from my original budget. And that's one quick way of making changes kind of at a mid-level in the hierarchy. Now, as you would expect, we can also type data directly into an individual product. So if I expand on my 3G smartphones and I can see all the numbers in here, I can change any one of these and just push enter. That will update all the totals going all the way up the hierarchy in real time. We can even take it right up to the total company and see those blue numbers having been changed at the total company. So every change I make is sort of rolling up all the numbers in real time. Now, I am still working in my sandbox, and this is a personal workspace. Nobody else can see the changes that I've made until I choose to commit them. And there's a handy little check mark here to allow me to say I'm ready to kind of publish these numbers so that others can see them on a report. Now, we can also cut and paste data in here. We've got lots of options for importing data automatically from external systems. So that's really any ERP system, data warehouse, data mart, GL, cloud-based systems. We like to automate that process so that every night we've got actuals flowing into the system, not just actual data, but also the metadata. So that's our product list, our department list, our account list, to make sure that stays in sync with the other systems in your environment. There's also some more sophisticated ways to get data in the system. There's the option to do data spreading. I'm going to flip back down to my budget area here. We can do data spreading at an aggregate level as well, choosing this right-click menu to spread data, and that gives me as a user some mathematical spread types to get data from a consolidated level and kind of push it down to the lower level. And my favorite is this relative proportional spread, where I can choose to spread data relative to something else. And a very popular one would be, say, let's make it relative to 2018's actuals. And I can just kind of pick those elements from this and choose to do that. And it'll tell me what the reference value is and what my current value is. And then it's just a matter of typing in a new value. And since this is a 3G phone, it might go down. I'll choose to replace, and we'll do spread. It's going to change my total to 1,000, and then the weightings for each fiscal period will be based on 2018 actuals. So the system's set up to make it really easy for users to get data in there, for them to fill out the templates that I've created, get their budget in, and get it submitted. We're trying to kind of reduce the amount of time it takes to do a budget and to do a forecast, to make it easier on the users to get the data in, and give them some options to do some analysis on the data as they're filling it out. Now, I had mentioned that we are doing driver-based planning, so we're planning for volume. I had initially started this showing gross revenue, and we can flip back to that. There is a calculation behind the scenes here to calculate gross revenue, and I can actually just run a quick little trace on the cell itself to see the formula for that. The system allows me to kind of audit and trace through the data anywhere in the system. So I can continue drilling down on this to get to how we calculate each of these components as well. And so I've drilled down, and it's saying, well, gross revenue is units sold times unit price. Units sold is an input value. That's just another name for my volume. And unit price is something that's configured as an assumption. And I can see this reference to assumptions, and I can see it's also an input value. Now, with most planning systems, we want to really elaborate on that driver-based planning. And so volume is not my only driver for my revenue plan. There's also a whole bunch of other assumptions that are behind the scenes that control pricing, product costs, discounts. All of that kind of gets brought into the model to help me calculate my gross revenue. And I have the option to allow my users to access those assumptions if they like. Now, I'm in a very simple revenue planning sheet here, but I do have a more detailed workbook specific to revenue, and I might make this available to the users, or I might keep it specific to the finance analyst to come in here and do some preliminary work on the assumptions. But I have a tab here for assumptions, and in here you'll see kind of by product and by sales channel, my unit prices and my cost and my discounts. And so this type of assumption can be as high level or as granular as you need it to be, and then that can be used to drive calculations. So flipping back to my bottom-up plan, I've showed you kind of an example of revenue planning where we're planning by product sales. As you can imagine, with each of these tabs, we plan a little bit differently. So if I flip over to my headcount plan, typically we see this done either by named employee or individual, or by sort of job code and job type. This is an example where I've brought in all my existing employees for the department. That can be brought in from an HR or an HRIS system. And then it's just up to the budget manager to put in any of their new requests in this particular model. Now, I want to emphasize again that everything you see on the screen is configurable. This is a demo, so we've chosen a few of the common fields that we plan for, things like salary overrides and merit periods and merit adjustments, as well as transfers and termination periods. And this is set up for data entry as well. And so I might put in Erica Dale here, or a vacant position if I wanted to just write vacant and try and get a vacant position or an open requisition approved in my budget. We've got some handy little pick lists to make it easier for my users to pick job codes and job types, and they're cascading. So when we get the sales job type, it'll give me a selection of job codes. Putting in one on an FTE, you'll notice it's pulled in a base salary already. That's based on a set of compensation assumptions that we've brought into the model. This is removing some of the guesswork for my budget managers. I want them to use some sort of standardized salaries for their plan. Things may be adjusted later, but this allows us to bring in kind of average salaries and have that pre-populate for them. They obviously have the ability to override it if they need it by just typing into this field here. There's a lot of calculations that go on behind the scenes for most headcount plans. That includes your standard CPP, EHT, EI, all your taxes, your benefits, everything. That's not necessarily something that the users can control. So I want to keep the input template for my budget managers relatively simple. Just tell me who you need to hire for the next budget year. But just like the revenue plan, I may choose to make those assumptions available to someone in HR or someone in finance to fill in. And so we've got all these other books that can be made available for select users, and we can put security on them so that only certain people can see them. And so if I come into the headcount planning book that's meant for HR to fill out, they can see kind of the same view here, but they also have this option to get into the assumptions. And here we would configure standard merit increase percentages, bonus percentages, all of the imported base salaries, the benefit assumptions. where we would put CPP, EI, EHT. And this is also where we can do some what if analysis from an HR or a finance point of view. And so to Erica's point about being responsive to questions on what if analysis, it's very simple to say, well, what would happen if we increase the bonus percentage for sales to 5% instead of 3%? And as soon as we type that in, it recalculates the entire headcount plan and does that kind of what if analysis for me. So the ability to kind of make changes on the fly like that and answer questions really quickly is super high value. If you think about the old Excel model of cutting 50 different Excel books and emailing them out, that type of change might take quite a bit longer to process. And it may require a whole bunch of different people to update their sheets and resubmit them just to answer a simple question, a simple what if question. So the power of a centralized data source that's secured and real time is a huge time savings and a huge benefit. I'm going to flip back to my bottom up plan now. As we kind of step through these tabs, you'll see different types of visualizations and different sort of ways of doing planning. This is a capital request form where we may enter, something that we need to purchase as part of our departmental budget. We can go behind the scenes then and calculate a depreciation schedule. Not necessarily something the users need to see, but we can sort of pre-program in some asset lifespans, some default asset types, and then have it kind of go through and calculate all that depreciation for us. We can also provide a field for justification, which would allow us to then optionally approve or disapprove of each of the individual capital requests. Moving along here, just a couple of other examples. OpEx planning tends to be by GL account. This can also kind of get broken out into components where some of them are driver based. So obviously our payroll and our set of payroll accounts, including salaries, benefits, bonus, et cetera, those are all driver based. And we talked a little bit about, putting in named employees and using an FTE as a primary driver. We're also bringing in salaries and all those assumptions related to the benefits. Those are all drivers that feed into the calculations that will then allow us to fill in the budget for these accounts, these payroll accounts. Other common examples are things like office expenses that may be driver based on a head count, or travel expenses that the driver might be number of trips taken. And so you can kind of expand on each of these areas by adding modules to the overall model, and then optionally opening them up for the users to fill in more detail where required. Lastly, we're always moving towards a set of reports, dashboards, financial statements. This is just a simple example of an income statement with some visualizations that show, a comparison between the budget and the target. You can see the blue numbers are still flowing through here because I've made changes earlier in my plan. And so we're showing some of these changes in real time on here. We can also extend this to include, an updated balance sheet and cash flow statement so that the users, even the budget managers, can have immediate knowledge of the impact of their changes on the income statement. It can still be filtered for their individual departments so they can see the numbers. And part of the motivation here is just getting the right data in their fingertips so that they can make smart business decisions. Now, lastly, I just want to show you quickly, no budgeting and planning tool would be complete without an Excel add-in. And so for those users that are absolutely in love with Excel and want to continue using it, you are in luck. There is a toolbar for planning analytics to work with the data directly in Excel. Generally pretty straightforward. It's a live connection to the server. I can start a new report here and find my revenue and just sort of drag it onto the Excel canvas. This is the same data I was looking at before. I just need to slice and dice it a little bit to get the view to look very similar to what I had before. And here's all my products. I'm looking at just phones and all my data. This is a live connection to the server. I always have the option to snapshot it to kind of disconnect it from the server. But the beauty here is that I can plan in Excel or I can plan on the web. It's all the same data. So changes made in here are reflected on the web immediately. It's all connecting to the same data. The same goes for downstream reporting tools. So as we start looking at the Certent solution with CDM, that's also a real-time connection to the data. everything's live. And so there's no overnight scripts that need to run. There's no queue builds that need to take hours to do. Everything's real time. And that's one of the very powerful features in planning analytics. And with that, I think I'm going to hand it over now to Kevin. Let's see if I have the ability to do that. Make presenter. Okay, over to you, Kevin.
That's great. Thank you, Brian and Erica. And thank you everyone for taking the time today. So before I get into my sort of demonstration here, slightly different demonstration model, but same concept in terms of the reporting I'm going to speak to. So I guess the biggest thing I wanted to mention here is, working alongside FP&A solutions such as planning analytics for many years. And certainly for those of you on the call today that are either investigating a new FP&A solution or own something today, there is typically a scenario, as Brian mentioned, where you are reporting in that solution. You're getting the data that you've just input or modified in some way out in front of you in a graphical format or a tabular format. But many times that same set of data points, either in graphical format or in the tabular format, needs to make its way into another medium, and typically that would be either a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation. And this consumption really happens downstream from the planning process. As you, of course, consolidate your information, you get your actual data in, your plans, and your budgets, and your forecast is ongoing. You're going to run some type of monthly management pack or board review or PowerPoint presentation alongside of those reports. And typically in the solutions that do provide you, like planning analytics, the ability to both input, import, and then extract that data into reporting mechanisms, they typically leave those systems and be transposed in a manual fashion for this type of reporting, which has been defined in our world anyway as narrative performance reporting. So combining the data that has been structured and organized, and again, giving you the ability to modify in planning analytics with a direct connect, as Brian mentioned, to the data structure there, and layer that information now into this different format, which is more of a narrative or presentation format. So that's really what I wanted to walk through today. Just a slightly different example, but hopefully you'll get the idea of the narrative portions of this and where the data flows in and why this is important. So as I walk through, I'll make some comparisons to some of the reporting that's obviously being done, as Brian just showed, but also some of the reporting that we want to highlight here. So this is an example of a standard sort of monthly management pack. It includes a number of different, as we just looked at, a number of different KPIs of the business that are typically tracked on some type of periodic basis. We talked about CapEx and profitability and collecting information around revenues, etc. Cash flows are in here as well, which are fairly important. And this usually happens again at the end of those periods. You're analyzing the business and you're telling a story about the business at that point. This is an internal view, as Erica mentioned in the introduction. For public companies, this story has to be told both internally and from a regulatory perspective, it has to be told externally as well. So if you're based here in Canada, you're reporting out to CDAR on a quarterly and annual basis, both financial information and your management discussion analysis information, some of which, of course, is fed by the FP&A team. So there is a dual purpose for this solution, but the focus today, alongside planning analytics, is really on the internal reporting side. So that's some of the contents that hopefully will align with you. And then as you start getting into the actual document itself, that same information, the driving of information around variances and that tracking favorable and unfavorable variances, and certainly, as Brian showed, there is an instant a consumption of that information in planning analytics. It's traffic lit. You can see where you're tracking well, you're not tracking well. There is an availability for commentary, as Brian mentioned, and that's line item commentary, which does have its value as you're drafting the plan and people are reviewing and commenting and approving. But once you get to a final space, that the end goal that you meet and where you end up at the end of the period, as an example, does need to be explained in more than just, hey, we had a net new marketing spend that made our actuals versus plan increase by $50,000. Well, what was that spend? Let's explain what it did. What was the impact, or what will be the impact on the business forward looking? So there's a lot more that goes into the explanations of these for management teams and potentially board presentations as well. And certainly if you're doing this on the external side for your shareholders. So again, a number of different items in here. We're talking about market conditions, maybe acquisition strategies we're having. We talked about the what if. Well, what if we were to do this? What impact would that have on the business? Well, that story again needs to be told in some way, and that's aligned with the area here. And then typical, as Brian showed, is the combination now of taking that information. The tabular views already exist. We leverage those views. We direct connect to that same data set. We pull it out. We put it into the format we need here, alongside some additional commentary that you're going to have around all the things that are happening in the business. Again, favorable, unfavorable variances are our key target here against different account line items. And this also includes, mixing and matching either at a top level, the actual parent company, the corporate level, but this can cascade down that hierarchy tree, as Brian showed, into different subsidiaries, entities, divisions, geographies, whatever that makeup might look like. That could all be replicated here as well, and of course controlled from the corporate level. So you can build these templates up and cascade them across different user groups, or I should say entity groups in this case. And then combining of data as well. So as also mentioned, not all of the information perhaps is going to be contained in a solution like planning analytics. You may have HR data, actual HR data, other information in the organization that you'd like to pull in. We have an ability to direct connect to planning analytics and pull the data live there, but we also have an ability to connect to a number of different systems outside of planning analytics, because they all do in some way have to combine here to tell the full story. We also do support the graphical representation of that data, as you can see here, driving, sales review analysis here, both our own sales and channel sales that we have in our business. The margin review as well, of course, same logic, tracking these both through the tabular commentary and graphical representations. I'm sure you get the picture here. Profitability trending. This is a monthly report, so we run this monthly. There is an automatic rollover, so as the planning analytics system, as you've seen it rolls from one period to the next. We're doing rolling forecasts, whatever that might be. We're pulling in new actual data. All that information is available to us and will roll automatically in the solution as well, updating all the charts and graphs, driving a more internal P&L view, and again, mainly from a top line item level here, not drilling down as we saw earlier, but taking the top line items. However, all the data is applicable if you wanted to go into a deeper dive on the P&L or balance sheet, or looking at 3-year fixed asset schedules and CapEx, etc. You can drive into lower level details. So I have an appendices here that does exactly that, getting into the sales and margin at a much lower level, talking about those things. Of course, that Brian mentioned, the discount percentages, allowances, etc., that are kind of assumptions hidden there, but we want to represent those and tell a story about those as we drive through our report. All of this is again handled in the Word or Office-based environment. That's how we wrap our solution around. As you can see, if I expand this open on the left-hand side, this allows you to define that Word document. So this is the Word document in different sections. And the ability here is to say in the executive summary, I'd like to subsection that executive summary because I have multiple people that are collaborating on this. This obviously does have a number of stakeholders. They have to have eyes on the data, and then they are writing the narratives around that data. And that's typically where that collaboration comes into play. And most organizations today, as Erica mentioned in introduction, may be doing this in a very manual way. You're extracting from your systems, you're usually into Excel, and then you're rekeying or copying and pasting into Word or into PowerPoint, which I'll talk to next. This alleviates that. So your data comes in automatically. You now have all your users working on the exact same version at the same time. You can cut versions in Blackline. There is audit trail of versioning as well. You can revert back to previous versions if you like the way wording was stated earlier. So all of that is applicable to you. And each one of these sections, if I just pop it open quickly here, each one of these sections can also be controlled in as a simplistic or complex way as you'd like. Very similar to working in a solution like planning analytics, where there's a workflow component. You're going to track people through a specific workflow chain. We have the exact same workflow capability here. This allows you to track people from roll forward of the document straight through the work in progress to a review and then finally to an approved state. So again, that's just an example here. You can control who can read and write, who can only comment, and then of course, who can modify the data refreshes. All that stuff is contained in our workflow components. And this really is the control factor. So as multiple stakeholders might be involved, you may want to control that. And this can be very, very simple, a one-step or two-step process, or it can be a 20-step process. You can control due dates here. You can dashboard this. You can see where documents are at certain points of time. There is a summary of the report that you'll have access to. You can filter that summary based on workflow status. So what's currently in work in progress, what's currently still being reviewed, what's been approved. And then again, you can just double click on any of these specific items. They are live. They will take you directly to that area, and you can start to either modify or contribute or review or comment on these specific sections. All of the information in here, whether it's contained in Excel where we draw the data, whether it's in Word or in PowerPoint, as we'll see in a minute, this is all native functionality within Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So we're still utilizing the core functionality of these solutions inside of the Certent platform that does align, as already mentioned, with the direct integration to planning analytics. So that data is all flowing through automatically. So this is a nice sort of way for organizations to manage the building and of these documents, whether those again are PowerPoint slides. As you can see, I also have a PowerPoint section below, or whether that's a full Word document. These can be generated out at any point in time in a number of different formats. Word being an obvious one. PowerPoint we just mentioned. You can send this out in read-only in PDF. It will convert for you. Again, you can email directly to people outside of the solution for review purpose in a read-only format. It is a multilingual application, so for those attending the webinar within Canada or regions where you do have a multilingual requirement, we also adhere to that as well. And then for those interested in the external portion of this, that are producing an annual report with a glossy front half, there is a design capability here, or integration to design. So if you wanted to push out to a publishing house or a printer, we give you the opportunity to do so. So again, lots of different output capabilities in here that we have, as well as being web-based. We can promote a web-based file for posting on a website, mainly for external purpose, but also for internal as well. So lots of different output capabilities there. So alongside of this, as already mentioned, we do have the capability to bring in data from multiple sources of information. And in doing so, when we generate the document, which I'll do again here, we can validate that data. So the typical use case here is you're bringing in two sets of data from two separate systems, maybe an Excel schedule or working paper, and you're trying to tie those out or foot those out at the report level. Very difficult, obviously, in working in Word. It's a manual tie-up process. We can build rules, as you're seeing here. So when you generate the report, it will automatically run the rules. This is a mini reconciliation type of a report. You can see you either pass or fail the rule. For internal reporting, you can layer in materiality and threshold to these rules. So if you're trying to look at anomalies in data, possible rounding differences, things that you need to capture prior to releasing this report, you can build those rules directly in, analyze the data coming in from a solution like planning analytics, and possibly tying that out with other information from a separate system, whether it's HR related or sales related. And in addition to that, of course, building your own rules for anomalies of data that you know exist on a period by period basis, and you deal with all the time. This helps to automate that, identify it very quickly, and then rectify it just as quickly. So there's a nice component there to validate information. And then finally, as we roll into sort of the different output capabilities, I did want to mention this as well, the PowerPoint capabilities. So we're not necessarily saying we're taking the full Word document that we showed earlier, that full mainstream holidays document here. We're automatically throwing in the content that we require for our PowerPoint deck. So it's a presentation version of the larger. And most companies, and that might be yourselves on this call, they only do a PowerPoint deck, which is absolutely applicable in this application as well. You do not need to do the Word portion of this. You could manage your entire integration of data via PowerPoint. So your data would still roll in live from planning analytics in this case, and it would be then formatted inside of your PowerPoint deck. And this is just, again, tracking key performance indicators of our business, looking at different markets, looking at our sales review individually here with the commentary that we layered in. So you can also link commentary here. So the latest and greatest. So typically when we look at this and we talk to clients who have been using this for internal reporting for many, many years, the statement is always the same. They're able to refresh their data 5 minutes before walking into the board meeting, and then they present directly from the solution or generate out from here into PowerPoint, and away they go. They have the latest and greatest data. No need, again, to scramble for any last minute adjustments that need to be obviously updated in the tables, but then also updated anywhere you've mentioned them in the narrative or the charts or the graphs, whatever that might exist. So there's a nice sort of circular connection point here to the systems you have in place, like planning analytics as an example, and of course the data that you then need to report in a different format than the reporting that Brian mentioned. There is a definite place there, ad hoc reporting or periodic tabular or graphical reporting, but when you need to align that, you need to take that out and put it into a format such as Word or PowerPoint, as we're seeing here. That's typically where a solution like the Certent CDM solution comes into play on the internal side, but certainly if you're looking at this more from an annual report and accounts position or an MD&A or an interim report as a public company, that's typically where you could utilize this for external reporting as well as internal reporting. And it's both the same solution. It is licensed the same way for that purpose. All of the skill set you require is the same for both internal and external, and all the connection points, of course, are obviously the same as well. So I think, as Erica mentioned, a very 40,000-foot level, we did want to leave enough time here today for questions. And I think between myself and Brian, we can probably go back and forth. If we need to show anything, we can do that, but we can certainly maybe Erica open it up for questions to give us enough time, as I know there's quite a large audience on the call today.
Perfect. So we can definitely take some questions. I haven't gotten any so far, just so you both know, in the chat window. If anybody has questions, you can enter them in the chat window on the GoToMeeting application. So feel free to take a minute and do that. Thank you very much, Kevin, for that 40,000-foot view. It's such a powerful tool. I always, every time I see it, I'm impressed by it. And the fact that I can, bring in data from 6 different disparate data sources at the same time on the same PowerPoint slide just kind of blows my mind, So it's something that I really think is a time saver and a risk mitigation tool for a lot of our clients. It's been a game changer for the companies that we know that would have implemented it. So I don't see any questions coming in at this point. So I think we're good. Any final comments, Brian or Kevin? I think we're good.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Perfect. So if you do have questions following this session, please don't hesitate to email us. We're happy to follow up. If you'd like to go a little deeper, look at how these technologies might apply to you in your organization. Again, would love to follow up with you one-on-one and take this from the 40,000-foot view to maybe let's go to 20,000. Let's not get too aggressive here, but let's talk a little bit more specifically about your particular situation and how we might be able to help you streamline your budgeting and process, your financial close processes. How can we give you back time in your day to actually do some of that analysis? I had a colleague once say, let's put more A in your day from the FP&A side. So how can we do that? How can we help you look at all of those things, all those data elements? How can we streamline your external reporting? How can we really look at using technology to make our lives simpler? And that's really what we're all about here at NewComp is finding a way to enhance quality of life by providing enabling technologies like CDM and planning analytics. I don't know, I just came up with that. That was pretty good. So that's it for today. We will send out you the recording and follow up with you shortly. I hope you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your week. Bye for now.